Alrighty, so I remember being in college as my first year of freshman composition, and we were talking about our future, right? We're all 18 years old. We have these great beliefs, maybe dreams, that someday we're going to reach the American dream. So you're not crushed yet, right? My dreams weren't crushed until I was probably about 23 or 24. For the longest time, I thought that a person with my ability to speak, my level of education, that I was going places. But the longer I spent at a minimum wage job, the longer I realized that I was very wrong. Because tech seemed to be something that in the 2000s was a field that still was very stable. Job security existed in the tech field 25 years ago, but not anymore. And that is a tough thing to say because I remember hearing this and thinking this myself is that as long as you were in the tech industry, you would never be unemployed. And I have spent large swaths of my life, not 1 year, not 2 year, but many, many years of my life working in retail because I could not find a tech job. And it's terrible. It's terrible that even though you might be working at a minimum wage job, that getting into technology at entry level still required many, many years of experience, but that you were only making a couple more dollars than you were working at a fast food place. Right now, with In N Out Burger paying $18.50 an hour, go look on Indeed and see how many help desk jobs right now are paying $16 to $17 an hour. And in some cases, much less. And the reason for that is because a saturation of workers going to trade schools like DeVry or ITT Tech, places where people believe that they're going to get these incredible skills. And don't get me wrong, the senior manager at my current job has all those certifications. They renew them every few years. And look where he's at. And that goes to show that putting like a CompTIA or a Network Plus or a Security Plus as a requirement for an entry level job is completely a waste of time because they're not, in my opinion, they're a total waste of money unless you're really young. You just graduated from high school or you just got out of college with a degree in computer science. You spent the past 4 years coding and doing theoretical science. And then you get to the workplace and realize, oh my God, the only job I can get is entry level help desk. Your years of sitting in a classroom aren't going to help you. And the person interviewing you does expect for you to know basic commands inside of a command prompt. This is a question I've been asked in so many job interviews that it's ridiculous. In fact, I remember going to one job interview in particular. This one stands out throughout my entire career. Sitting in a job interview with four people, each of them asking me questions. And then we got into a portion of the interview where they were asking me, what port is TCP? What port is DNS use? What port does HTTP use? And I sat there and I just looked at him like, I think FTP uses port 21. These aren't real questions. They're not real world questions, but these are the types of interviews that you will go to when you work as a technology worker. And a lot of young people, including all of my Gen Zs, had no idea what a command prompt was. In fact, I had to show them, each one of them, how you do a ping. And the reason for that is a comment that someone left for me earlier today. Gen Z and younger entry level workers grew up as digital nomads, right? These are people that have had iPads in their cribs. They've grown up surrounded by technology. They've been able to Google things. They've been able to find out information instantly. And for the most part, you don't have to use the command prompt for anything anymore. And so when they have to do, again, this is entry level stuff. When they have to do that stuff, they didn't learn it in college. And they're out here looking for work without having fundamental skills of a tech janitor in corporate America. Because let's face it, you're not going to be working in tech in a mom and pop shop where they have a server rack in the back for their e-commerce. No. In fact, it was something I read today is that less and less people have experience in networking because networking has now become in the cloud. And so that experience that you would have had doesn't exist. Anyhow, very long introduction. Let me get into my monologue so we can hit our talking points. Tech jobs used to be stable careers, but now they're just fancy gig work with extra steps. Companies don't want to train new talent, don't want to pay experienced workers, and definitely don't want to offer job security. So instead, they're outsourcing, automating, and turning everything into short-term contracts. Pretty soon, IT workers won't have salaries or benefits. They'll be logging into an app, bidding on tech support gigs like Uber drivers fighting over a $3 ride. And when AI inevitably screws up, these same companies will be shocked to find out that they fired all the people who actually knew how to fix things. This is what happened to my own evil corp, is that they decided not only to fire all the janitors, but also to fire all of the tech people and replace them with call centers. And so all the places that rely 100% on the call center in India, they're stuck. When they need help, there are long waiting lines, and there's a guy that you can barely understand on the end of that line. But that's it. In fact, the other day, I was getting a hamburger at lunch at Rallies, right? I haven't eaten at Rallies since, oh my gosh, the first years of college. It's always been there, right? I've always lived close to it on university, but there was something about it that kept me not going back to it. And believe me, I can let another lifetime pass without ever going back to Rallies. But the one thing that stood out to me was Rallies had all, how do I do this in a sensitive way? I looked inside of the restaurant, and all the people inside the restaurant making the food were all of a certain ethnicity. Let's just put it that way. The drive-through, on the other hand, was an AI bot. You know how I knew that? Because I spent a lot of time with AI. I know that voice. I know the voice recognition. I talk to AI all the time through back and forth banter through the Soro app on ChatGPT. So the second I heard it, I'm like, oh my God, the drive-throughs is an AI. And it did a great job. It took my order perfectly, and I was very happy with the ordering system. Now, the quality of the food is a video, it's a video unto itself. But that crispness, the way it understood, it was able to provide the service I wanted with no additional chit chat. Today, when I went to go buy my green tea from Dutch Brothers, there's too much chit chat. And I think human beings have gone away from wanting to deal with other human beings as little as humanly possible. And that's the niche that AI is filling, is that we become very antisocial people, especially in the workplace. And I think this is the key to corporations using AI as their main tech support. Because if it can take my order at rallies, it can definitely do my level one tech support for a corporation. And we've all been there. Try talking to Amazon. It's just an AI that's running in that chat. That's all it is. When you want to talk to a human being, you got to jump through some hoops. When I lost my license key for Adobe Premiere and I wanted to get a new one, there was no phone number whatsoever. I tried to call the chiropractor's office the other day. No phone number. I tried to make an appointment for cupping for my back because my back always hurts today. I called half a dozen businesses. I couldn't talk to a human being. Why? Because it's cheaper. And IT has got to get cheaper. And corporations are looking to any way of saving money and making certain they get rid of as many human beings as they possibly can. Every time I walk into a Kroger store, regardless of where it is in the valley, I'm amazed that there are 8 self-checkout machines on each side of the store. While there's maybe one human cashier working express, and maybe if it's busy, you'll have another person on a register. Aside from that, they let those self-checkout machines work all day. I know they lose a lot of money. I worked at Walmart. I worked on those self-checkouts for years. And people do some crazy things. To say, I've seen the most beautiful women show up at a grocery store with weights inside of their own bags in order to be able to steal from the store. And if I'd seen it once, I would have thought, oh, that's strange. And I've seen so many people pretend to check out at the self checkout and never finish the transaction. In fact, when I worked in retail, we had a serial offender at the store where I worked who would go through the line, pack everything up, put her card in, never put her PIN number in, and just walk out over and over and over again until she got banned from the store. Well, it worked for a long time. Anyhow, getting back into our video here, let's get into talking point number 1. More IT roles are contract based with no benefits, no job security, and no real career progression. So before I got this job, there was a company that I signed up for that was this way. It was gig work IT. I think it was something Nation, like Labor Nation or something like that. And it was an IT firm that would put up jobs just like Uber does. And every day you had these women that work there, and they would call you. It's like, hey, I've got a server that's down at this location. You can pick up the key here. Can you be there within an hour? Well, I didn't have a car at that time, so I would have to Uber to these locations when I was doing this type of work. It sucked. Some days it was lucrative. Some days you'd get a good contract. Some days it would be a multiple day contract, and it would pay very well. You'd make $300 to $500 a day doing contract work. But there was no stability. There was no benefits. There was no job security. And believe me, career progression when you're working for an IT gig app, no. And more, we're seeing that these types of companies have found a great way to save money. Why hire workers when you don't need them all the time? Now, can you imagine if this is the way that fast food went, where when they needed a lot of people, they would just outsource them. So there would be an app. Okay, we need more cooks at McDonald's because there's more demand. And then once there isn't that demand, surge pricing, right? Once there isn't that demand, you send all the people home, or they go out and they get back onto another app in order to look for work. Think of those people that are driving for Lyft, Uber, what's the other one? DoorDash. All of these, they have all of these apps running simultaneously on their phone, waiting for their next gig job. IT could look like that in the future, or it looks like that now. Because if I was doing those types of gig jobs, and this was, oh my gosh, when did I sign up for Labor Nation? It must have been probably 2019 is when I signed up for it because I was in between jobs, right? And I still needed money to eat. So it seemed like the most logical thing is to do gig IT work. But it's not till now that I think back upon those days and wonder, it's like they really were setting the framework up in order to get rid of technology people in the office. Because I remember the last thing that I did, the last gig job that I did, I got paid, I think, $300 for the day. And all I had to do was set up a few network printers at the Target corporate center, which is a really strange place to be because it's not by my current job. It's over by Lifetime Fitness. Anyhow, they had two identical buildings and they were call centers for the corporate office where they handled credit cards and the website questions. But they had two identical buildings with identical everything. You looked around, we had to go into both buildings because we had to move network printers off of pallets and then move them into the buildings. But the extra building was purely only used when it was the holiday season. Once the holidays ended, they got rid of all of those jobs and they just ran the other building. It was a seasonal building. Can you imagine that? Being such a rich corporation that you can build an entire building just for the holiday season. I thought it was incredible. But again, showing the simple fact that corporations will always take the path of least resistance when it comes to profits. They're always looking to exploit, cheat, and take advantage of anyone in any situation. And that's the terrible world that we live in. But that's just the way it is. Talking point two. Instead of training new tech workers, companies use AI to cut costs and reduce staff. AI tools are being treated as cheap replacement for skilled engineers. Now imagine that. They can replace skilled engineers with AI. And that means that every person lower than an engineer, that your job can be done by an AI. In the future that I foresee, the dystopian millennial steam future, I see human beings only used in labor such as meat packing, farms, or I don't know, maintaining your yard. Every other job that touches technology, even fast food workers, there are automated restaurants in this world. And I saw the futuristic looking Pizza Hut a few months back. And this Pizza Hut was basically a vending machine. You type in what you want into the vending machine, and it cooks your pizza right in front of you. No humans needed. I thought that was hilarious because if they can replace workers inside of a fast food place with automation, they will. Because corporations don't like people. Absolutely wish that they didn't exist, or even better, that people would work for free. That's really what it comes down to. In the future, corporations want people to work for free, not just overtime. They don't want to pay you. They don't want to create a non-toxic workplace. They want you either not to be there or to show up to a place where they can continually profit from your existence. Because the biggest problem with workers is that a lot of them get complacent. A lot of them are demoralized. a lot of them do very little actual work. There's a lot of workplace theater that goes on out there in corporate America, and the reason for that is simple. With wages that aren't keeping up with the cost of bare minimum life, the overall quality of the proletariat's life is extremely low. And when your life is extremely low quality, your work is extremely low quality. And that's what the corporations have picked up on. There are more quiet quitters out there than enthusiastic SpongeBob like characters who think that someday, as long as they put in incredible effort, that they will be rewarded. And that's not the case. That hasn't been the case in a long time. But instilling values like that, and this goes back to public school, in my opinion. In public school, they say to you over and over again, from the moment you're in kindergarten, get good grades because losers live loser lives. And what does that entail? Work harder, get better grades, do better. So when workers leave school, they've already been programmed to believe that only the hardest working people with the best grades get rewarded for it. But the reality is they get exploited the hardest by a system. Sure, if your family owns $1 billion corporation, or you personally own $1 billion corporation, and then I would ask, what the heck are you doing on my channel? But for the rest of the proletariat, they've caught on. And the idea of working a full 8-hour shift disgusts the proletariat, especially Gen Z that doesn't understand why you have to be there all day. This is the discussion I have with Gen Z to this day, nearly every day when he asks, can we go home early? And I'm like, oh my God. I feel like it's Groundhog Day some days. It's like, you can't go home early because that's why those security cameras are watching you. Those cameras aren't there because they're cute. They're there to see what you're doing. And he's gotten to the point where every afternoon he goes and he sleeps in his car. Behavior I've often seen in demoralized, unmotivated proletariat workers is sleeping during the day. But I commend them for it. There isn't any motivation, there isn't more money, there isn't any promotions. All jobs in America have become McDonald's. And it's very, very hard to motivate workers when they're making that McPaycheck while getting a Happy Meal toy while they don't know how many hours they're going to get next week. And that's another serious problem. But I've reached the end of my time. I still had a bunch of talking points, but as usual, I like to talk more than I like to pay attention to what I'm doing over here in the structure of the video.